Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into a significant event down in Louisiana. It's about a large-scale immigration enforcement operation. We've got sources from, well, all sides, official statements, the industry that was impacted, immigrant rights groups. Our mission, to get past the headlines, cut through the noise and understand the real impacts and the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting here, I think, is how just one event like this can really expose these complex tensions. We're talking labor, law, the economy.
Yeah.
They all intersect. So
Yeah.
we'll look at who was involved, why they said they did it, and importantly, how different people reacted.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So the basics are U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, announced they arrested over 80 people. These individuals were reportedly unlawfully in the country, and the raid happened at the Delta Downs Racetrack, Hotel, and Casino, that's in southwest Louisiana.
Right. And it wasn't just ICE on their own. They mentioned working with other federal agencies, state agencies too. FBI, Border Patrol were named. The whole thing apparently kicked off because of intelligence, suggesting some businesses there, specifically at the racetrack stables, were using unauthorized workers. That was the term used.
Uh-huh. And connecting that to the bigger picture, what was ICE's stated reasoning?
Well, their official line was that these kinds of operations aim to disrupt illegal employment networks. They also mentioned protecting American jobs and preventing worker exploitation as key goals. Oh, and they did note that at least 2 of the people detained had prior criminal records, something they make sure to point out.
And this wasn't happening in a vacuum, right? There was context around enforcement levels at the time.
Exactly. This raid came as the administration was reportedly pushing ICE for much higher arrest numbers. Figures like 3,000 a day were mentioned in some reports, driven by figures like Stephen Miller. So it fits into that wider context of ramped-up enforcement.
Okay, now this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. The reaction from the actual horse racing industry. Peter Eckebear, he's general counsel for the National Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association, representing like 29,000 owners and trainers. He didn't mince words. He called the raid unacceptable, said it left the operations basically stranded without workers.
Yeah, that's a strong statement. He emphasized how crucial these workers, the groomers and stable hands are, providing that essential care, which is grueling, round-the-clock work. He stressed how hard it is to find people willing and able to do that job.
So it really throws that conflict into sharp relief, doesn't it? The enforcement action versus the immediate practical needs of the industry.
It really does. Eckebear mentioned being willing to cooperate with ICE on, let's say, a more orderly process. But he felt this approach, this kind of raid, just left everyone in a, quote, bad situation.
But wait, the racetrack owner had a different take.
Yeah, slightly different angle. Boyd Gaming Corporation, they own Delta Downs. Their spokesperson, David Stroh, basically said they comply fully with federal labor laws. He also made a point of saying no Delta Downs team members were involved and that they'd cooperate fully with law enforcement.
So Boyd Gaming distances itself a bit, emphasizing their own compliance. Interesting distinction.
It is. It makes you wonder about the specifics of that intelligence ICE mention versus the company's position.
Okay. And we also need to bring in the perspective from immigrant rights advocates. What did they have to say?
Well, we have a quote from Rachel Tabor, an organizer with Union Immigrant. She called these raids harmful and hypocritical. Pretty direct language. Her argument was essentially that our economy runs on immigrants, and creating this kind of division actually harms the economy for everyone involved.
Right. And you mentioned earlier this wasn't a one-off event in the area.
No, definitely not. Our sources point to other recent large-scale ICE operations in Louisiana around that time. For instance, there were arrests of 15 Central American workers that were working on a federally funded flood reduction project in New Orleans, and another case involved 10 Chinese nationals arrested at massage parlors in Baton Rouge. So it seems part of a broader enforcement push in the state.
So, okay, let's try and pull these threads together. We've got ICE's enforcement goals, the disruption and outcry from the horse racing industry, the compliance statement from the venue owner, and the criticism from rights groups. What overall picture does this paint for you? It feels like a real snapshot of competing priorities.
I think that's exactly right. It highlights this fundamental tension, doesn't it, between enforcing immigration law as written, disrupting those networks they mentioned, and then the immediate, very real consequences for businesses that rely on immigrant labor, often for jobs that are, frankly, hard to fill. Plus, the broader societal debate about the role of immigrants in the economy.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect. One action causes waves across an industry, sparks public debate.
Yeah.
It shows how interconnected everything is: labor, law, economics, individual lives.
Precisely. This deep dive really shows how complex these situations are on the ground. It's
Hmm.
not just abstract policy,
Mhm.
it has immediate, tangible impacts.
So, thinking about all the enforcement side, the industry needs, the human rights aspect, what stands out most to you? Where do you see the biggest clash, or maybe even any potential common ground between these different viewpoints? It leaves you thinking, doesn't it?